to respect the process. The post-semifinal edition, the exit interview edition. And I want to start off with...
I wish I wasn't here. I was actually in the car headed to Houston edition.
I mean, that's the thing.
Personal.
Has anybody ever really wanted to go to Houston that badly, except for...
Yeah, the Apollo 11 astronauts trying to get home.
Yeah, but...
Houston, we got a problem. I guess that wasn't where they were landing, but you know what I mean. Look, it's disappointing, obviously.
Yeah.
It's easy to take it. The further you get away from it, the easier it is to take a 30,000-foot view.
Yeah.
And understand and appreciate how far they came.
Right. Yeah.
And that was still stings.
Coach Saban has said is talking about the receipt for what they accomplished this season.
Yeah.
And I get that. I get that you are trying to show this team that, listen, you exceeded a lot of expectations from what people had put on you at many points throughout the season. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk about something that's pretty topical, I think, in terms of right now. Obviously, the transfer portal.
Right.
Coach Saban has done his interviews or exit, whatever you want to call them, meetings with players. Senior center Seth McLaughlin, who has probably been talked about more as a center than I don't think I would go to any center. Yeah. Playing in a Power 5 conference. It is. There are a lot of conflicting feelings when I got that information. I had a lot of different feelings about it. First of all, I wondered, did he meet with Coach Saban for his meeting and then make the decision? Do you have any idea?
I think so. I don't know.
Or make the announcement, I guess I should say.
I'm speculating because I don't know definitively, and I always try to be honest about that. You know, there are things that I know, and sometimes I can't say, but most of the time, frankly, you know, I'm not. Coach has got enough going on. It's not like I'm in his office or sitting outside of his office waiting to get feedback on stuff. Most of the time, when you hear me say something, I try to be honest about it. It's my own spin, my own speculation as to what's going on. And with this, I would be a little surprised if there had not been a meeting before he came out and said definitively, do you have an idea of what you want to do? I'm sure he did. But I'm sure it's after a conversation with a coach that he made up his mind to do this. Because
you reflect on his performance throughout the season, and it's just been 30 some odd bad snaps.
Yeah, in the game
seemingly all at critical times in the games. And he's a smart guy.
Oh, he's brilliant.
Finance
Great
major,
guy,
good kid.
I can attest to that.
You wanted to cheer for him. And part of it, you know, I was telling someone today is part of it, I'm a mom. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, was he bullied into this? Did he feel like, because for 4 years he's bled crimson. Yeah. And I know he feels like he has let people down throughout the season. I have to believe that.
Well, it's very tough when you have a failure on the biggest stage.
Yes.
And look, Bama probably doesn't get where they are without him.
Right. Absolutely. Without question.
But at the same time, you know, there were multiple bad snaps in the game, including on the final play. But again, it's people's reaction initially. You know, the first night, while there was a little bit of talk about the snap, most people are just blaming Jalen. What's he doing running it right in the back? And then when it's broken down for you by people that really know what they're looking at, and I mean coaches, I mean former players, people that are truly have been there and understand. Well, he ran in the middle because the middle came to him. Yeah. I mean, the middle got knocked back into him. The snap was low so that he's not able to have his eyes up so he can see where he's supposed to go left. In fact, the snap took him as far away from where he needed to look as it could possibly take him without it going over his head. And so that busted everything up. You know, I heard terrible play call. Well, we never got to see the play because of where the snap went. but also, as was the case against Auburn, when Seth got blown up about terrible snap, well, he's hearing a clap. How can you snap it then? Well, because you go off of a clap, and there was a clap before he snapped the football.
Right.
And as Coach Saban said, it wasn't the Auburn guy, in his opinion, trying to throw him off. It was the Auburn guy trying to get the attention of one of his players. So whatever the reason, there was poor execution. And with him transferring, it's understandable. You got an opportunity. There's multiple things at play. There's that. Is he running from something? No, I don't think that's it at all. But at the same time, you've gotten your 4 years. You've gotten your degree. You got 1 year left. You got a chance for a fresh start. Man, I've always wondered what it'd be like in Columbus, Ohio.
Right.
I wonder what it'd be like there. You get a chance to do that, and you only get one chance to be this. We've discussed this. We've got kids roughly the same age. And I've got a daughter who just graduated college who's got an opportunity and chose to go live in London for the last several months, and she's going to do so through the spring, and get her grad degree online while she's doing it.
Yeah.
And everybody says, man, you got to do it now because you do it while you're young. You do it while you got an opportunity. That's really what these guys have now with the transfer portal and all that they've never had before. In the past, if you wanted to go try somewhere else, it was 2 years. Well, now I'm gone. I can go play. I don't have to go through just a year of practice. I can go play somewhere else. Somebody needs me, by the way, they may offer me some cash on the front end. That's just what the rules are now. That's where it's available. Is it over the top? Probably. I'm talking about in general.
Yeah.
Not in Seth's case, but in general, yeah, it's over the top. And it's probably not what the rule was intended to be, but it's what it is. And there are opportunities there, and I can't blame a kid for doing that, especially when you have negativity surrounding whether it's deserved or not.
Was Saban too loyal to him to keep him at that position?
I look,
because we're talking about the same coach that switched quarterbacks at halftime at a national championship game.
But a coach who also had been, I'm not going to say pressured, but who had a lot of people in his ear who were paid to be in his ear and share their opinions that wanted to see Tua before they saw him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as I said many times, and I'll just go because that's the most glaring example, we saw on 2nd and 26 why everybody wanted to see Tua.
Mm-hmm.
We also saw on 1st and 10, the previous play, why Coach Saban was hesitant to play him. We also saw on the final touchdown of regulation why he was hesitant to play him. Because that touchdown pass that was caught, was it Judy that caught the pass? Maybe it was one of the receivers. Catches the pass. It wasn't intended for him. It was intended for Najee Harris, and I think it was behind him. And it was caught by the receiver instead. It worked out, even though it wasn't really what was run. And don't get me wrong, Tua is phenomenal talent. Phenomenal athlete that opens up things that other guys can't. But there were also, especially at that stage of his career, mistakes that Nick Saban thought could be lethal to your team, or were more mistakes that would put you in a more precarious position than Jalen Milroe's mistakes. And even though there was more upside with Tua,
mm-hmm.
there was steadiness with Jalen at that time.
Yeah.
And so I know I'm long-winded, but that's kind of what we've got a format for with like this. He stuck with Jalen as long as he could.
Oh, I'm talking about, with Seth.
But with Seth, I don't think there's not a Tua behind him.
Do you want me to go
There's
get you
not a
some
clear
water?
go. We can do that in a second.
Yeah.
I'll do it. That's the beauty of this too.
I
I
know.
can walk wherever I want to. There's not a.
Because a lot of people said, is there no one else that can go, or why aren't we going under center necessarily instead of the shotgun? Is there no one else behind Seth that could get this going?
I'm fully of the belief that on everything that they actually look at, they being the coaches and all that, everything they look at.
Is that the water boy?
It's right. He is so
Here you
good.
go, look at him.
If
Bobby Boucher. Bobby Boucher, there you go. Oh my gosh. Look at that handoff. It's seamless.
Fantastic.
Please don't edit that out either.
No,
and I mean, that needs to be
good.
a part of this broadcast.
Product placement as well.
Gosh.
If there was a better option, we'd have it. That's why, and I hear this all the time from the armchair quarterbacks, and look, we all do that, myself included. However, there's a guy in charge who's considered to be the best in the history of the game at making those decisions.
Oh, I know. And
he would have had no problem saying we got to get another option in there.
And
if he thought
and
there was
he
a
would
better one.
own it. I mean, that's the thing. Coach Saban owns his decisions and he stands by them.
Or he'll even take the fall for others on occasion.
And that was one thing that I had heard speculation of is Saban too loyal to a fault? Is this part of him, the softening of Nick Saban, where he feels loyalty to his upperclassmen?
Don't tell me, not you, but in general, don't tell me he's gotten soft or whatever.
Yeah.
People spin things for their own argument. I mean, would you have said Nick Saban was soft in his first year at Alabama?
No.
Of course not. But you know what Nick Saban did? He kind of went against his own, I'm not going to say better judgment, but against his own gut reaction and let DJ Hall play on senior day because he knew it was the kid's senior day. And even though he hadn't brought the kid in and the kid had put up big numbers, the kid had family there, and he gave him a chance to play, went through the senior day ceremonies, and I don't think he played in the first half, but he played in the second. So, again, that was 17 years ago. That was on the front end of what's been the greatest 17-year stretch for any coach in college football history. People love to pick and extract something to fit their own narrative. And if you want to say he's gotten softer, that's an inaccurate word, but you can find things to help back that up. The man has a softer side than he did when he got here.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he's soft by any stretch.
Well, we'll get back.
I'm soft. I can't quit coughing.
Stop it.
Sorry.
My gosh. Well, you've been on an airplane. You're out in California.
They have things in California.
They've got lots of stuff out there. But you said it was a good trip, except for, it's kind of like
So the final,
Lincoln going to the theater. It's great,
other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, it was a great play.
Yeah.
I thought it was a wonderful experience. I had a wonderful time. The stadium itself is nothing special. It's the landscape around it.
Right. Oh yeah.
You can't replicate that.
There's a reason it's called.
Everything is around it. Everything around it's great. People were really nice that I encountered, and I'm not just talking about, in where they're paid to cater to you.
Yeah.
In the media areas stuff. I'm talking about everybody that I dealt with was just fine. It was a really cool opportunity. I'd never been to Pasadena before. We talked about that last week. I'd never been to the stadium. Getting to go the day before and look around and see it, and it was kind of interesting. It was a pretty day, but it wasn't what January 1st was.
Yeah.
When I went the previous day, it was almost like they flipped the switch and said, "All right, we got the sound stage.
We're gonna turn the lights up now, and we're gonna."
And it was, as I said on the radio broadcast, it was a day where God was just showing off.
Yeah.
It was early. It was low 60s. There were a few clouds that were, again, the master painter
painted on there.
Had just thrown those in for a little.
Bob Ross had come in and just
a little bit. The ultimate Bob Ross had come in and fixed it, and it was gorgeous. And if that scoreboard had just continued to read 20-13 when it was all zeros up there, it would have been perfect.
this was not the way I think Alabama thought they were going to lose the game. I don't. The ending just was not the narrative. They did not. I'm just. Alabama fans did not see Michigan playing with the heart that they did. And I think at times it felt like Michigan did want it more and was a little bit more prepared.
Well, I don't know that I would agree with that.
Okay, go ahead.
Here's what I will say that was much different that I saw. Not saying you're wrong, but what I saw and my feeling
you were
was
there.
It was different.
Yeah.
It was different, but here was the difference. Michigan was far faster than I anticipated them being.
I think from the first play.
Bama is slower than they've been. Mm-hmm. Not slow, but slower than they've been with the bigs.
Yeah.
The bigs have always been big but fast during the best time. The bigs were big and not as fast this year. And the pretty bigs for Michigan were pretty big, very tough,
that front seven
and very fast. They were quick. They were fast. They had better speed. Quarterback Corum was fast, but McCarthy was quicker, faster, which allowed him to be better than I anticipated. That part was very interesting to watch, and that was the difference to me. It's not that they were any more skilled. It was not that they were any better technique. Certainly weren't out coached. There was not enough of a speed differential, and shockingly to me, if there was a difference in speed between the two, it favored Michigan.
Absolutely.
It didn't balance. They were quicker in some key spots.
Well, and then to watch, J.J. McCarthy had all day back there. We gave him a lot of time. And one interesting thing I actually heard Coach Saban say just today was that one of the differences was Alabama had not played a team that huddled.
And they did some.
And that changed a lot of. That was the first time that they had played a team that they could not immediately read the formations.
Yeah.
And to have the huddle come out, because that is not something that is. It's scripted. That's the way the SEC plays their games.
The tradition. It's funny the stuff that we used to take for granted because it was traditional, was what you did every time.
Yeah. When
all of a sudden you see it, it's odd. And you're like, and that was part of why with 4.5 minutes to go and you got the lead, you felt pretty good because they hadn't really shown the ability to go with urgency.
But that last 4 minutes, I don't know that any Alabama fan felt good for the last 4:41 of that game.
You know, there were two, with all that being said, and I think they deserve all the credit in the world. They were terrific. But there were two things that show just how razor thin the margin is in winning and losing. Two plays. There was the pass that he completed that actually got deflected at the line of scrimmage. I mean, barely tipped.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it didn't throw it off its path. It didn't slow it down.
Right.
It didn't change the path dramatically. If it gets batted straight up in the air, there's a good chance for a pick.
That was McCarthy, right? Was it Braswell who got that?
I think Braswell
he got just a tip on it.
A nail.
Oh, barely, yes.
But also, if he doesn't deflect that, I'm not so sure that pass doesn't airmail the receiver and Caleb Downs and take it the other way for a touchdown. I thought it was going to get picked. Now, granted, he's behind the play, but the way the guy jumped, the receiver, as I'm doing the play-by-play live, I'm thinking, oh, wow, we got one.
Right.
But it just threw it off enough. And the other is obviously with a minute to go, you punt the football away. Got a guy back there that's supposed to be, I guess, more sure-handed, but had not returned one, and he drops it. And Kelly, I mean, you saw the replay just like I did. That thing is rolling end over end, and if it goes one more bounce like the previous 2 or 3 that it had taken, that ball's recovered in the end zone, and the hit's going to knock him down. The contact's going to take place in the end zone. That's what was being yelled at my house.
Yes, that's
right. But it wasn't. They got the call right. But instead of that thing turning like this and going over, it hit like that and checked up and goes straight up in the air. And that's why the guy, when he possesses the football, is in play rather than possessing it on the goal line, which is a safety,
right,
or all the way in the end zone. So those were two things right there. I mean, the slimmest of margins.
Yep.
There were difference. That all being said, Michigan can take 100 plays the same way, I'm sure. I'll tell you something else I didn't expect.
Tex-Mex was not the same as we consider it here. No, okay.
Queso was nothing special.
It's really okay.
Alabama very easily could have won the national championship this year with everything they've overcome. I don't know how you determine it other than just playing it on the field and you know, if you did the computer stuff, all that, and you put everything in. I think this team may have maxed out. I think Washington, I'll put it this way. I certainly believe we could have won the national championship. It would have been great to go to Houston. Really, with, as I had said, I was pulling for Washington because it's going to open up more tickets.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
But not that it's going to be an empty place, but you're competing against Washington money as opposed to
drivable Alabama money, yeah,
and oil money for Texas. If Texas wins, it's going to be tough to get tickets if you're a Bama fan for that, with everything that was going to be involved cost-wise. Absolutely could have won. But I could make such a case for Michigan being clearly the best team. I could make a case for Washington. I could make a case for Texas. And, yeah, Georgia as well. I'll take my chances with this Alabama group and coaching staff and players, everybody. Go to battle with them any day and would have no problem with it. But this is not one of those that I go, man, we should have won it all.
Yeah.
You know, the kick six year, that's when we should have won it all. The Clemson loss, when you have it literally come down to the final play, that stings. There are, just like I'm sure Georgia will always do with Tua in 26, as close as we were, very, very proud of what this team did and very respectful of who the competitors were that were all there. I wouldn't go so far as to say, oh, if it's a given we win, because I can't do that. There have been years where I could.
Yeah.
This is not one of those.
Well, you know, in baseball, I like to relate things back to baseball because that makes sense to me. But, you know, in baseball, what I found is you want a wild card team. It's a wild card team that's going to make a run into the postseason because they have a little bit of magic on their side. Yeah. And you just did not, you felt like maybe the magic had worn out. As you said, after the Auburn game with 4th and 31, after the Georgia game, they had a month. But I agree with you that
sometimes you can have too much time off, and I don't know that didn't factor. I don't think that was the case.
That was not the face. Yeah, exactly.
That's my point.
Yeah,
is that
exactly.
You can have that happen, but I don't think that was the issue. If anything, I think Bama needed, especially with Jace McClellan, a chance to get fully healthy and rested. Yeah. I think you had at season's end 5 teams that were all capable of winning the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which is why when it goes to 12 next year, that part of it's going to be fun. Sadly, because of what you're seeing with the opt-outs, you're going to have a bunch of other bowl games that I'm afraid look like Georgia, Florida State did. Rather than the playoff games where you had an overtime game and a final play of the game finish.
I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better night of football than on January 1st. And College Game Day I felt like they had a lot of College Game Days each morning. But one of the mornings when I was watching, you had Kirk Herbstreit saying that he believes that the bowl system is about to become irrelevant, that with the bowls outside of the playoffs, that it's becoming and it is kind of a glorified exhibition.
Coach Saban said that years ago.
Yeah.
Well, he said this is where we're heading, and he was right on the nose with it. I've said it for years. I feel about the bowl games, my perspective's different now. I get a chance to broadcast for one of the most iconic brands in college athletics.
Right.
One that right now is a contender every year for the biggest prize in college athletics, the College Football National Championship. But I have also had a chance to experience the things that a lot of people consider to be throwaways. I've talked about it before. My first game was an Alabama-Arkansas State game in 1980, I believe it was, 81 maybe. Little kid, the ticket that people complain about that game now, the one before the Iron Bowl, that was my first one to go to.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kids. There's a lot of people
Yeah.
who never get a chance to
Absolutely.
see an Alabama game without that. My bowl experience used to be the original Hall of Fame Bowl, which became the All-American Bowl,
Yep.
and now, because of its location, the Birmingham Bowl. I know most people don't care about that, but if you're just a kid and you love college football, you're getting that experience, which allows you to become a big-time fan later on. There are kids. Here's another part of that for the players. If you are into the team thing and you're not going to be a NFL player or pro or something else, which
is
the majority,
the other
that's
97%.
You're
Yes.
absolutely right. It is the majority. I have traveled with teams at different levels, 1AA in the old days as well as Alabama. It's pretty much the same for football. Regular road game, you're on the plane if you're fortunate. You land at the airport. Buses are there. You get off the plane, get straight onto the buses. You go straight to the team hotel, or you go to the stadium and walk around. Then you're at the hotel. Meetings within the hotel. Meals in the hotel. The day of the game, bus to the stadium, game ends, stadium back to the airport. Done. It's bam, 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 bam. Everything's regimented.
It's very sterile.
It's no different. Other than getting on the airplane, it is literally no different than a home game weekend. Okay? So it's all, you're not making trips. Basketball, you got a 2 or 3 game event that you're playing in Destin or the Bahamas or St. Thomas or Maui, like I've had the privilege of doing. You got some downtime. You're getting to see some things, explore some things. There's only one game for football, one, all year, where those kids get a chance to see and experience things as a team, as a group, on the road, outside of the games themselves. It's a bowl trip.
Yeah.
Even Alabama at the Rose Bowl got to do some things beyond football as a team, or they had a certain amount of time at night before they had to be in for curfew. They could be college kids and enjoy that. It's the only chance they get to do it. So you can talk about, and most people do, well, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything to you. But for the ones that invest their time, energy, and efforts, those are some things and experiences for some, not all, but for some, they'll remember more than anything else the rest of their lives.
Well, absolutely. And people will talk. I mean, people still, were you on the team that went to blah, blah, blah? Or were you on the team that went and played this? They get a ring. It's a big deal. I get it.
It means something.
But obviously people above our pay grade will be making those decisions. But it will be an interesting debate as we move forward, especially into next year when we have the playoff system in place and we have the 12 teams, and then you see, 13 through 20, not even 20, 13 through 57 who goes and plays that. I mean, and I know it also is an economic impact in a lot of cities too, when you have tourism and people coming in.
We talk all off season about how ready we are for the season to get here. there is nothing wrong with an additional game.
No,
There's nothing wrong with it. I think it should be a reward. I think there should be some minimum standards for it. That's why, 500 record, fine. Sub 500, and there are not enough eligible teams. Let's start looking at, graduation rates or stuff like that. That's fine as well. To pull your pool of teams that are 5 and 7. If not, for all of the ones that weren't eligible, Jacksonville State and who was the other one that was in the mix for a long time?
Oh gosh, you're making me think.
Not Coastal Carolina.
You told me I wasn't gonna have to think today.
No, but the other team that was right there and was undefeated for about 10 weeks, and they had to appeal.
Not James Madison.
James Madison.
Okay.
Thank you. Those are the two programs that it almost took an act of Congress for them to get into a bowl game this year. And they did, and it was great. It didn't hurt anything.
Mm-hmm.
James Madison may not have been able to go. I still can't remember.
Yeah, they did. They did.
Okay.
They got beat, but they did. They went.
But they went, what the heck does that hurt? We got two better teams in. They didn't bump anybody else out that would have been worthy.
Exactly. That.
So sometimes we make stuff way more difficult than it needs to be. And we overthink, and we're such a knee-jerk. And most of the people that are so opinion on that stuff, it doesn't impact them one bit. The complaint about the games the week between a conference game and the Iron Bowl for Alabama or for Auburn, for that matter. You don't want to watch? Don't watch. You don't want to go? Don't go. Give your tickets to somebody else or go do something else. You don't have to watch. There are other games on. There are better games on. That's fine. But just because it doesn't fit your narrative doesn't mean that the other side's wrong.
Yeah. So, moving on from this game, already now we're talking about going into the off season, and revenge does not seem to be how this is going to be positioned, how this team is going to respond, how they're going to move into the 2024 season. It's going to be an interesting message to see where, because you get some guys back.
Right.
You're going to see a lot of new faces.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously we've had, I forget the number of guys that did enter the transfer portal. A couple of the guys that we knew would declare for the draft or moving on to the draft. But I will be interested to see come spring and summer how this team shows. And I guess because they're going to mature. It's going to be a different message than we've seen them in the past couple of years.
For the guys that are back that were experiencing this year, you're right. And I think they're going to be quite a few. The part that I think changes so much is that the rosters change so dramatically.
Right.
And it's why I don't think you get the emotion, and I don't think you're able to pull on, gosh, we were so close. Now, some rosters you can.
Yeah.
Some rosters,
Michigan, for example, because they had so many guys coming back that had lost to TCU last year.
They'd lost each of the last 2 years in the semifinals,
right.
had they not? So
you had so many upperclassmen that had played together and felt they. Not to Michigan's credit, but they had a lot of things stacked against them this year. Their head coach not being able to coach them for the first 3 games of the season. Then the allegations of cheating, having lost the past 2 years in the semifinals. This was a team that did have motivation and had kind of this is the revenge tour 2023.
And it's why still there are a ton of people that will be pulling for Washington against them.
Yeah.
I just think now more than ever, especially at the elite places with the portal, with the opportunity for the best players, and it's not like it's brand new, but there are more and more who are opting to go into the draft, it seems, after their junior year when eligible. I think every year is going to be such a fresh roster and a new look to teams that it's going to be very seldom that you have enough back that it's a true, all right, let's go get it one more time.
Yeah.
I think it's for the ones that are returning, but it's not this. They're not going to be there in the greatest numbers.
Yeah.
I think of Alabama basketball. I know we're talking different sports, but there are similarities. This team had a ton of young guys that were a part of them going to the Sweet 16, winning an SEC regular season and tournament title, and the most wins in school history. And you talk about the fact there's only 3 or 4 guys back. Okay, and those are your veterans on the roster. Everybody else is they got 9 new faces.
However, they're all seniors and
most of them are.
Yeah.
And the guys that are coming back, every one of them, they're 1 year that they'd been on campus. Mm-hmm. So, they're your veterans on campus, but they're not reflecting on more than 12 months of memory.
Yeah.
There on campus as well, because they're still relatively new. They wouldn't be considered veterans on your roster any other time practically, but they're the only ones that know where stuff is right now because they're the ones that have been there before. I just think this is more and more going to be the case where there are so many new faces that it's going to be tough to truly build and sustain momentum from one year to the next. I mean, you can't have similar success or more success, but it's not the traditional way. The days of what we grew up watching of guys 4 and 5 years at one place, even
remember 2 years ago when
the good old days. But Seth, we started this program talking about even guys like Seth McLaughlin. Academically, everything right.
Yeah.
Football-wise, starter. Ordinarily, people would be thrilled that a guy's coming back, but because of what the narrative was in for the year, but especially the last ball game, if I'm him, am I coming back to the place, even though it's been good to me, and you know that the vocal minority is not who you really should listen to, but it's kind of hard not to.
Yeah.
Fresh start, 1 year, go try something else. That's happening more often than not among the guys. Because what you have are the guys that were great and have options, and the guys that thought they were going to be great and now are going to go somewhere else because they want a fresh start for a whole different reason.
Speaking of the portal, guys staying, guys leaving. This morning on Next Round, Lance was still saying that, I still think Coach Saban is going to leave.
Heard that.
Retire after this. Then not right now. We're not going to get word on that right now. This morning on Pat McAfee, he's laughed at it, saying that no, I'm still planning on coming back. Your thoughts?
I think
on
he's
Nick
back.
Saban coming back.
I think he's back. I've seen nothing to indicate that he's ready to walk away.
Yeah.
The day will come. It does for everybody, but I don't think that what happened this year. I would have, if we'd won it all, maybe. If we'd only won 9, maybe. Man, the dude still cares about winning. The guy still loves to recruit. He ain't pulling back on that at all. He enjoys the interaction. I think he needs the interaction with players. I think that's something that he thrives on. He enjoys
without a doubt.
Those relationships. And we've heard him say it a ton of times, man, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I'm not saying he doesn't have things that he can enjoy. I think he enjoys his family more than he has at any time in his life. The fact that, and I talked to him on his radio show, the bowl preview show that we did from Los Angeles 2 nights before the title game. They started the bowl experience. They had practice in the morning, and then that afternoon he and some of the players went to Disneyland for a media thing.
Yeah.
And he got to go in the parade, had to go in the parade.
I saw him in the parade. Gosh, he looked like the happiest guy in the happiest place on earth.
He told me, he told us on the air, he said, I'm sitting there, I got my wife, but had his grandchild too.
I saw his granddaughter sitting there, yeah.
And he said, the thing that was really cool was seeing so many smiles on so many people's faces. He said, it's kind of hard not to be happy there. And I know there are things that can come across as forced and I know that there's a lot of him chomping at the bit. He'd rather be breaking down film I get that. But it doesn't mean that he can't appreciate things in the moment themselves.
Yeah.
And getting to be with family and experience that's the kind of thing I'm not going to say he never would have allowed himself to do before, but he never would have admitted, I don't think, the enjoyment that he did get out of it.
Yeah.
And you can tell when it's genuine, and you can tell when you're kind of giving a company line. That was genuine. He enjoyed thing with his family. Now, that could have been only for about 5 minutes, and he was ready to move on. Yeah. So be it. How many times have we done things with family, including kids, that you
let's
go,
wrap it up. Yeah, we've
come on. I get it. And he's just in one of those spots where any and everything he does is under the microscope, spotlight. That all to be said. I think when Alabama opens up its season next year, he will be the head football coach.
Yeah, I think until he tells you to change the name of the show that you do after the game, then that'll be a good indication that he's not coming back.
And it'll never be the Chris Stewart show.
No, but and I agree. This morning when Ryan and Jim were talking about, there will be a well-placed succession plan that is. I think so. When he makes the decision, I don't think it's going to be a spur of the moment. He surprises everybody.
I agree. But here's the stuff to watch as well, and why this has been so good for so long. As great as Nick Saban is, the reason Alabama has been what Alabama has been is because you've had for 17 years a football coach, an AD, and a president that were all in lockstep.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can have a great season with just one of those, and it's obviously got to be the football coach. But if you're going to sustain greatness over any period of time, you better have all three, because president's office can absolutely blow up what you're doing in athletics. An athletic director that's in over his head or doesn't have a clue can screw up football and mess up your relationship with the president's office. You can have a president and AD that are good but want to have their own they want the glory, they want it all on them, and it can totally jack up and you can run off a guy.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing, is that Mal Moore went and hired Nick Saban, handed him the keys, and said, "Tell me what you need me to do."
Yep.
And he did it. Bill Battle.
And he got Terry on his side, too. He got Miss Terry on his side.
First.
Yeah, and that was huge.
But Bill Battle, very similar vein. Mm-hmm. And then you brought in the best athletic director in the country, who also was smart enough to say, "Coach, we're going to give you all the resources in the world that we can. My job is to keep you happy and to help you at your direction do what you think we need to do." And that's where they've gone. But also with Stewart Bell the last several years, and it started with Bob Witt. They had another president there briefly, and then Dr. Judy Bonner, who was there for a few years. But the two longest tenured presidents were outstanding. I think I said Joab Thomas. That's not right. Bob Witt. I'm sorry. Robert Witt. Joab Thomas was the president at the end of Coach Bryant's run, and the one that hired Ray Perkins, that a lot of people will tell you, and I wasn't around, so I'm not making that declaration, but there are those that will say, Dr. Thomas was not the best fit with athletics.
Yeah.
At that time.
You're giving a good history lesson here.
Well,
I'm
it is, but they're really important, and I also think they factor in. If the old thing about those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
You better have a plan, but you better have the right people making that decision. You better have a president who understands what athletics can do for your university.
What's going to drive the bus?
Athletics can destroy your university if you're SMU and you're the Pony Excess and you let the inmates run the asylum, and it's a bad situation
Yeah.
And that's what they had. They had some bad decision makers. I'm not going to
Yeah.
say bad people because I don't know them, but that's what it tended to look like. It was a mess, and athletics screwed it up. But you've got to have great people. And as much power as Nick Saban had and has, he's always cared about what's best for the University of Alabama, because he knew the stronger the University of Alabama was and is, the stronger his football program is going to be. You know how many recruits they take to basketball? That's why he wants everything on campus to be good, because when we bring in recruits for all these other sports, I see them on the field on the sidelines before the games. They're bringing them in. All the coaches love football doing well, because that makes those football game day visits huge. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
The atmosphere. Hey, this is what Alabama athletics is like. Flip it around. They bring guys in for football weekends to recruit.
Right.
They want to see a good basketball team on the floor. Entertainment. They want to see that Alabama's winning in softball. They want to see Bama winning in soccer and baseball and everything else, gymnastics, run through it. They want to see Alabama winning. And so he supports that. He encourages it. He helps it. He brings kids in. Football weekends, when they've got a difference maker as a recruit for another sport, it's asked well in advance. It's scheduled and all. But Nick Saban will talk with recruits. He's had softball recruits in on a football weekend to talk to him. And he doesn't just go, hey, here's my rings. How you doing? Tell me about yourself. He knows. He's given the same info on recruits from other teams that he has for his own recruits. He wants to know about their families because he recruits them. That's who he is. That's who he is, and that's why I'm saying, if you're going to be what we've been, you've got to have all three in place, president, AD, and it helps to have the winningest
stability
coach in terms of championships of all time.
Okay, so long story short.
That's me. No, my short story long, but go ahead.
Nick Saban sticking around. You had hoped that you wouldn't be going to Nashville, and nothing against Nashville. You had hoped you'd be going to Houston, but in fact, Alabama basketball opens up conference play against the Commodores on Saturday.
Correct, Saturday afternoon.
I was able to see them play last Saturday at the BJCC. It was a lot of fun. Okay, you talk about like an Arkansas State game. Super fun. A lot of kids got to go see Alabama play basketball that may not normally get to go to see a game in Tuscaloosa.
And not as many as we'd hoped.
No, but
I understand.
Hey, it was a good time.
It was a good time for those that went, and there will be bigger name opponents in that game in years to come. There have been in the past, but Liberty's been good. Bama played incredibly well, and here's the encouraging thing just for right now. 3 of the best games that Alabama played were all losses. In succession, all away from Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
In essence, on the home floor. It wasn't a packed house in Canada, from what I'm told, but you had a ton of Zach Edey fans. You didn't have much of an Alabama support there. It was a home game for Purdue. You then go to Creighton. You're playing them in Omaha on their floor.
Full house.
You had a last-second shot that rims out or would have put you in overtime. Top 10 team. Purdue, by the way, the previous week, number 1. The week you played them, number 4. The team you finished that road trip with is Arizona. Their only loss at Purdue when Arizona was number 1. Now, they'd plummeted all the way to number 4 in the country when Bama has to play them, not on their home floor, but in Phoenix on the home court for the Suns. Overwhelmingly, as you would expect, Wildcat faithful. It was their home game. And Bama let it get away in the last 7 or 8 minutes, but that was a really good ball game for a very long time. So that being said, you played for all but about maybe 15 collective minutes in 3 games, as well as you have all season long, and you got no wins. It's easy to come back and you're playing Eastern Kentucky and Liberty in front of less than capacity crowds.
Go through the motions.
Slop around, look bad. Didn't happen. They kept it going.
They
both
took care
games,
of it. It was fun. We enjoyed watching them.
And now you're going to go into conference play. You're going to start on the road against Vanderbilt, who's I think got a losing record right now, hasn't looked very good, but they're coming off of a game where they lost, I think, on the road, but I know in overtime to a ranked Memphis team.
Yeah.
They're dangerous.
But
you're going to
Alabama's
have to play well, but you're in the better spot, and you've got a chance to win, I think, about 4 games here to start conference play that you will probably be favored in.
Yeah.
And if you get those knocked out, now you're sitting at 12-5, 4-0 in the league with 12 to go, or 14 to go. I'm sorry. You're in a good spot.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I had
Me
a lot
too.
of fun. I had a lot of fun watching them. Look forward to see how they jump into conference play with Vanderbilt, then South Carolina coming up after that.
Sure.
But we appreciate everybody sticking around. We know we usually do it Wednesday. We had to move to Thursday. We did a little bit later. We appreciate everybody's flexibility with this.
Yeah, everybody's great. This is a fun team to be a part of, and I mean it sincerely. We've been friends with all these people here at the Next Round and Double Down Media for a long time.
Good people.
So to be a small part of what they're doing and be a part of their platform, we're thankful for the opportunity and love working with you.
Hey,
and
of course.
We'll talk.
And
we
we're
get a
gonna-
chance to
and
visit
we're-
for 30 minutes, and
Exactly.
if people listen, great.
Well, we'll be back again next week with more Respect the Process, moving more into basketball. But obviously, as football comes up, we will continue to talk about any additional fallout. But thank you for joining us this week. Thank you to Scott Forrester and everybody here at Double Down Media and Disrupt the Media. Double Down Media? Double Down? Double Down.
Double good,
Disrupt
double
the Media.
good, double
Next
down
round.
media.
We thank you everybody for joining us. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Roll Tide.